I think we're live. Okay, we're live. Let me just clean my glasses because obviously I am not smart enough to do that before I begin streaming. I don't know why having dirty glasses bothers me more when I start streaming. I think it's because I lean into the mic a little bit. Oh, let's try not to pop too much. I think that I broke this mic stand too. Yeah, it's busted. Huh, that explains a lot. All right, anyway, um, after that confusing start, uh, let's go ahead and tell people that we're streaming. How did I do this? Well, I'm certainly not going to fix it on camera. I suppose I should just get a new mic stand. This one's like 5 years old, and it was $10, so it's not like it's a huge deal. It looks like I somehow managed to misthread the top of the mic stand down to the base of the mic stand, and it's like canted funny. Streaming Indie Dev. Gonna do faces or skin and equipment. And then we'll go over here and do the post here too. All right. So last week we created this little masky thing. There are some things I after looking at it for a while, there are some things about it I don't like. So we're gonna just tweak it. And then we'll do some skin stuff, and then we'll maybe do some other customization stuff like hair. Just make sure that it's not. Yeah, that's fine. I just have to change the some of the values here. They're not quite right. So this is what it looks like in Blender. It's very beautiful. Just switch over to something where we can see it. So there are two things I don't like about this mask. The first is that outside of Blender, it looks much longer than this. And that's because the glass shader I'm using in Blender, or rather in Unity, is much more transparent. I think what I'll do is I'll just create another glass. Let's go ahead and try that out here. We'll go ahead and create another glass. Because the glass that we're using, it was intended for something else. It's not quite right. So if we just do a fade here, we can just set it to have heavy glass material and then set the albedo to something more transparent, like this. And then obviously we'll want to spice it up so it feels a little bit like glass. When you're underwater, things are a little bit different in terms of the way they reflect light, because a lot of how a material on the surface reflects light is based on how wet it is. And when you're underwater, that's not really going to work the same way. So if I were to add some metallicity to it, it'll darken the glass, but unfortunately I'm not using any kind of algorithmic... there's no algorithms for creating the backdrops, the skyboxes. That's the word I'm looking for. And so metallicity won't reflect anything unless I do it more carefully. But one of the things it does is it creates this black halo. You see that? Based on the light and camera normals, it will create unusual characteristics. And what I actually want to do is program my own shader to do that a little bit more carefully, which we'll do later. But for now, I'll just leave the metallicity on a little bit and call that a day. So you can see that this is very similar to how it looks in Blender. See that? Whereas before we were using a different kind of glass. This one, which is much less obvious, doesn't shine or have quite as much pop. And that the more transparent glass was making it look like this nose element. It's not really a nose, it's really a breather. But it was making that element look really, really long. But with that de-emphasized, it's not quite as long, but it's still a little too long. So what we're going to do is just de-longify it just a little bit. We're in the middle of an outbreak here in Somerville, so you can expect to hear a lot of sirens as people call 911 for anything and everything related to their health. So when I shorten it, we're going to get a little bit of crunching over here because this was never intended to be quite this shape, but we should be able to tweak it. Let's go ahead and try and tweak it until it feels right again. Yeah, like that. So that should give us a little bit of a more snout nose sort of feel. We're going to add a little bit more detail work here. This was a little bit too primitive. It turned out a little too primitive. The shaping isn't quite nice enough for my interests. So we're going to reshape it a little bit until it feels a little bit more natural. And then we're going to punch some holes in it so that it feels a little bit more mechanistic. Basically, when I posted it, the first and only comments I got were related to how it looked like a furry mask, which is not necessarily bad, but it's something I don't want to do on accident, you know? So we're going to try to just tweak it until it looks like a diving mask, a futuristic diving mask instead. And one of the ways we're going to do that is show some of the internal circuitry over here on this side panel. We're already using a glass material, so we might as well use it in several places. So to do that, we're going to need to decide exactly where we want to cut out. It's a little hard to see because it's black. Also, I think that this is a bad setup here. This whole area kind of dives down a little too low. Let's go ahead and just see if we can adjust it so that it's not quite that low. If we were to pull this up, then in theory, we could grab this and pull it up too. That's a little bit better. Probably going to want to put something here. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and just put something there. Doesn't even matter what. We'll just Basically, I just want to hide my clumsy design work with more clumsy design work. This is the equivalent of that trash can in the corner meme that I'm sure you've all seen. All right, so now we're going to punch some holes in the side here, which we'll do by just using some face select. And I think we're going to want 2 holes, one down here and one up there. But we might be better off with 1 hole. Let's go ahead and just use 1 bigger hole now that I'm thinking about it. The only issue is that it goes all the way back. I guess that's probably okay. You know what? Let's duplicate this whole shebang just in case we need it later. So when we extrude in, we can basically just get ourselves a nice window like this. But the problem is that when we extrude in, we end up losing this front face, and we would have to rebuild it. So what we actually want to do is duplicate like that, and then we can move that off to the side for a second, and then we can extrude in like this. Not quite that far. Then we can shrink it down just a touch. Then we can bring this fella back over, at least for now. Mark it as glass. And then on the inside, we can put ourselves some tubing. So that should be fun, right? This is a little bit too dense. I guess it doesn't really matter how dense it is, so I'll just use it. Shoop. You can see that it's got like a lot more density than it needs in terms of how many faces it has, or how many edges it has. Now it's how many faces it has. So when I extrude this straight back like this, we can mark it as black. We could also mark it as metal, whichever one. I think metal's probably a better choice in this case. And all we're going to do is kind of stick it into place. It's not going to be that complicated. Just working a little bit blind here, but that's fine. So you can see that it's not quite aligned properly, but that's because there's a curve. we're going to need to make it go around the curve, which shouldn't be too challenging. It should just be a matter of putting a kink in the middle. Let's go ahead and hide this window. Now, I think that the correct way to do this, if you're actually doing game stuff, is to do it as a separate object. I am simply not that interested in modeling it correctly, which is the reason I'm not doing that. So as you can see, it pokes out from the window there a little bit, so we need to adjust the size. I think we can just scale the whole thing down slightly and then move the front and back. I like X-ray mode a fair amount, but it always chooses whatever in the back whenever you're clicking on stuff, which I guess makes sense, but if you just leave X-ray mode on because it happens to be what you're using, then that means that you end up having a real hard time selecting things in front. So if we were to pull that in, and then we take a look, you can see that that's all inside like this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate that and run it down a little bit. And of course, we'll just adjust it to be shaped a little bit more for the lower end instead of the upper end, because it's not a perfect setup. So we'll just grab this and move them down. And the other thing we're going to want to do is add in a processing unit. So to do that, we're going to want to grab this guy again. Japow. Shtaboop. Shtaboop. We're going to want to create a little bit of depth here, like this. Just delete that rear face because we're never going to see it. And then we'll just put it in. Now to create some shape to it, something more interesting, we're going to want to just create some projections. So if we were to go over here and go over to face, we should be able to beautify. No, that didn't grid fill. I guess I have to delete it before I can grid fill. That's fine. Just delete it and then grid fill. That'll give us a grid like this, which is going to be more useful when it comes to creating a visual, right? So if we align this center point along the crease between the two, we should be able to use the other lines across to create some kind of visual. So if we were to select this line, this one, you can see how it pulls out like that. So if we were to select both of them like this, and if we move it off to the side, you can see how it creates this kind of effect, which isn't quite what we want, but it's not terrible. So we'll go ahead and start with that. Well, no, that's not going to work at all. We'll just delete it. Maybe it would be a better bet for us to create some just pipe crossovers. So we're just going to go ahead and bridge those and then flip them and then flip them. Which direction is out? Oh, it's glass. Why did it default to glass? I copied two metal things. And the problem is that the rear elements are really shitty. So we're going to undo that. We're only going to use this and this. Go ahead and create a face there. Call it metal. And then we'll rip it. I can't rip it out like that. Well, whatever. It's fine. what we'll do is we'll extrude backwards. Or why is it extruding backwards as... Hold on, let's try that again. Sorry. I don't actually know what I want it to look like, so I'm sort of just arbitrarily hoping that it'll come together at some point, and it's not the best way to do things, as you might expect. So we're going to just mark this as individual origins and then create a shape like this, and then we can just shrink down the edge cases like this. And then if we were going to extrude backwards, we could do that, and then we could flip. And if we want to have an element on top, we can just do this and then bevel it. And then we can pull here and here out. And we can grab these inner elements here and move them out like this. And then we can just bidistance it. And then we have the top and the bottom here, which we can use to sort of go over the pipes and sort of indicate that this is a something that clamps in. Put another crease in, bevel that crease, and it just creates some elements on the end here. I'm actually not sure how to do this part. I guess the best way to do it would be to extrude all three like this, and then just grab the edges and bevel them away. If my fingers ever work. Come on, seriously? And then we can just bidistance it again. And that'll give us some sort of flangey sort of thing. If we wanted to, we could add in a little black screw. We might as well. We can do that by simply selecting these faces here, and duplicating them, extruding them up slightly, marking them as black. Switching back over to individual origin mode if you've moved away. That's interesting. Somehow I didn't actually manage to select them. I just kind of... That's better. And then we can just put in some cuts and scale those. More or less how I had envisioned it. Don't know if it's any good, but it's more or less how I envisioned it. The only other thing I want to do is see whether or not I can embed this a little bit further in, because it's just a touch too far. It's like flush, and I don't actually want it to be flush. It's just not quite right. You can see that that creates a problem with the interior elements. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move the interior elements until they work, and then we will move the pipes until they work. That works. This pipe didn't work even when there was no object on it, so we're gonna that's better. All right, so the only thing I don't like is this corner back here, which is a little bit blunt. So we're gonna bevel it. Boink. There we are. That should do. And I guess that means we need to bevel these front corners. That's fine. And once again, we're going to have to UV unwrap everything. Just any old unwrap will do at this stage. Yeah. There. Now it looks a little bit less animalistic. Okay, so we're obviously not using textures or anything at the moment, and the metal material we're using is really shitty. Let's go ahead and replace it with a different metal material. Here's the machinery. You can see we've got very, very few like metal elements. We've got some things called world metal. Those are not recommended because the damage on those is in world space. So that means that as we swim across the universe, we'll see damage ripple across all of our equipment and then fall off the backside. So that's not really what we want. We're going to have to create a new metal element. So we can put that in Diver, or we could put it somewhere else. We've got heavy glass, diver gear. We don't really have any default metal, so we're going to go ahead and create one. Create material, default shiny metal. We'll just drop that in here, and then we will change the setup so that it looks a little bit more metallic, right? So you can see that as we change the metallic element, it turns black. What metallic actually does is it's how much it reflects the sky map, the backdrop, and we currently don't have any ability to reflect the backdrop since we don't have a backdrop. We're going to put in a little bit of metal just to have a little bit of metal, and then we'll turn up the shine quite a bit here. But the problem is you can see how that really feels like plastic, not metal. See how much that really feels like it's like plastic. It doesn't really feel like it's metal. Having the shine go higher does make it feel a little bit more like a metal, but it reveals just how it doesn't really feel like metal. It feels like plastic regardless of how shiny we make it. And the reason for that is because the reflection of the background is really a pretty important part of making metal feel like metal. We just don't have a background. So that's going to be a problem for us. One of the things we can do, maybe to spice it up a little bit, is just to change it from white to something that's a little bit... No, that's not really going to help, is it? It just feels like plastic. Trying to think about a good way to do this. I guess we should probably add a map to the world. I just don't know how to do that. See how this is the default skybox with environment lighting, skybox, gradient color, environment reflection, default skybox. I don't believe I have any other skyboxes. No, and the default skybox is it's this one here, which is like blue. It's this. Oh, this one seems yellow. I guess it's kind of a sunset shape. So if we look at it, I guess we do have a skybox. I forgot that there was now a default skybox. So if we look at in the game environment here, if we were to grab our main camera and move it so that we could see the side of this character's head a little bit better. Oh, it still looks like plastic. Oh, I turned the metallic all the way down. So when you turn the metallic all the way up, in theory, it should be reflecting the skybox. Ah, there it is. There it is. There's a weird situation. I'm not sure exactly why it does this. This should be reflecting the skybox perfectly, right? But it's certainly not. I mean, admittedly, I guess the skybox is black on the ground, like below the horizon. It's black. Is that why it is doing what it's doing? No, because even from below, it's not giving me the orangey bits of the skybox. This is really interesting. I'm not sure why this is giving me such trouble. I mean, admittedly, I'm using the older pipeline, and maybe they just stopped supporting shit. I don't know. But I think we can get away with using a high level of metallicity and a lower smoothness, something like this. It doesn't really look quite as metal as I'd like, but it's, I mean, it's not shitty. It's just not very good. If we take a look, there might be some textures we can use to spice this up. What's holographic cuts? Yeah, so what I've just done is I've added in a metallic map, which allows us to create this kind of warping. The holographic cuts image will now tell us how much opacity we want. Holographic cuts is really hard to see, but it's basically this Voronoi noise texture. So we could use that to create the elements we're looking to do, and then just change the scaling so that it's not quite so obvious, something like that, or maybe like this. You can see the pixels though, so that's pretty shitty. If you can see the pixels, it's no good. So if we were to switch it out for, what's Jellytex going to do for us? It's that's really weird looking. Well, that'll give us like text and shit, so maybe that'll work. Well, for now, why don't we go ahead and just use this? We'll change it out later. We'll come up with an actual material at some point. Still feels like very plasticky to me. Don't know. I don't know what the secret is. Maybe it doesn't look like too plasticky in the game environment. Hard to tell. Anyway, if we're going to be using metal, metallicity on the metal, we should probably use metallicity on the glass. So if we look at the game here, and we turn the metallic level here, you can see how it just turns black. That's not what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to reflect the skybox. Not sure. There's lots of other things we can do. We can put in like detail masks and stuff, but this is fine for now. Now what we've got to do is map it to the skeleton because it's currently unbound. So if we come down here, we can just add in a skeletal binding by making sure to click correctly on the skeleton. It's really hard to tell. There's some skeletal stuff we can click here. Yeah, we can set parent, and we can say with automatic weighting. We don't actually want automatic weighting though, because what that's going to do is it's going to end up there is no, well, what that's going to do is it's going to end up making it so that when we pose the skeleton, things like the eye are going to end up controlling, yeah, see this? So obviously that's wrong and dumb. What we're going to do is we're going to make this visible in front. There we go. Then we can go into weight paint mode. I don't know which direction I have to go with this. Hold on. I think I have to go the opposite way. And then we go into painting. And we can select the bone we want to select here. No, it's not letting me select the bone. Is it a right click to select the bone? No, it's not. Is it a shift click? Shift click. So this bone here is the head bone. It's the one that actually controls the direction of the head. And absolutely everything needs to be bound to this bone. So we're going to want to set this to be symmetrical across the x-axis. That's good. And then we're going to want to auto-normalize. That's good. X-mirror, why not? Yeah, so this should be what we need. Then we're just going to make it really friggin' big. No, that's scaling the bone. I want to scale the mask. There it is. I mean, not the mask, the brush. I was thinking about how the brush had no mask and it got away from me there for a second. So that should be everything. Yeah, you can see how now this bone will move the mask and it will remain perfectly bound to it. That's what we want. So when we hit save and go back over into Unity, there we go. There's not going to be any difference immediately just because the character is not currently moving. But if we come over here into the neck and we tell the neck to rotate, you can see how now the head comes along with it. So one of the things you can see here is that I changed the suit to use object space coordinates, and it creates this really bizarre situation where it kind of slides across the character. You can see that up on the top of the head there, which I'm not sure is going to be something I can use. We may have to remap the character. I thought that the object space coordinate system would be applied before the bone transforms, but it's applied after the bone transforms, which means that as we move our arms and legs and head, the textures on them will constantly change, which might be cool. We'll try it out and see whether that works. But I'll probably have to redo my UV mapping. I think that my UV mapping is going to need a complete redo. So because of that, we're not going to spend too much time painting skin because I would just have to completely do it again next time. So we're just going to, for now, use darker skin tints just by manually, saying use a darker skin tint like this, which is, not ideal. There are lots of reasons it's not ideal. A big part of the reasons it's not ideal, it can be seen right here. What we ideally want to do is have custom skin masks for, 4 or 5 different base colors. It's not perfect to do it like this. Far from perfect. One of the other problems is that the refractance is really bad if you just change it based on skin tint. Without taking into account skin tint. It just doesn't look right in terms of how it reflects the light. So if we were to look at this in the game engine, and then move the camera a little bit so that we can... Why can't I select the camera? Is this locked? What's going on here? Let's save. There's something wrong. Oh. It's this fucking fog engine. It's barfed all over everything. It's fine. Try that again. So if we were to move the camera until we can actually see some hands or some skin. There we are. So this is kind of a medium dark skin tone here. And if we were to select it, so we can edit it, and then, no, that's not it. There it is. And then come over here into the game engine. What we would really want to be able to do is change the way that the skin shine works. We don't want to change the actual shininess of the skin exactly, but we want to change the response curve. I just don't know how to do that. Like, I guess what it would be changing the fake SSAO or something, changing the fake subsurface lighting. I'm not sure. Either way, we're not getting the right visual out of this. I don't even know if anybody else knows what I'm talking about. Well, either way, the next step is to set this character up as a character, because previously what we've done is we've had to manually add a crap ton of random pieces to our characters. For starters, we have to add a character controller, we have to add this, that, and the other thing. What we really want to do now is create a character base object. This will be an object which you just drop a blend file like this into. So if we take a look at Diver C here, what we've got is this skin changer script. What we're going to want to do is put that skin changer script on a surrounding object and have some method of automatically discovering the skins or whatever. We'll figure that out later. So we're just going to create a diver object here. Diver. Drop it at 0, 0, 0. Let's take this diver C, move the diver C to 0, 0, 0. Let's take diver B and just delete them all. Now that diver C is at 0, 0, 0, we can put it inside of the diver at 0, 0, 0. And in theory, that'll be okay. And then we can assign the rigid body and the controller and all that stuff to this. And then diver C won't be part of it. So when we drag the skin changer out into the diver here, there it is, we're going to want to set up this to have a reference to the body, but the problem is we would have to find the body within the file, and that's going to be an issue. I guess it's going to be not that bad, but we could always name the body something, like body. Problem is we're dragging it in from Blender, and renaming shit will probably cause errors. Watch. No, we didn't cause an error this time. Well, it doesn't matter. Either way, that's probably not the best way to do it. So if I were going to do a couple of other things, we have a lot of details here that we're going to need to keep track of. Like, where is the animator? Does this not come with an animator? I'm like 99% sure this is supposed to come with an animator. Interesting. Well, if it doesn't come with an animator, we can just add one in, I suppose. No, it's definitely supposed to come with an animator. Diver C doesn't have any animations in it, and I think that's what's going on. I think that's like it's saying, oh, there's no animations in this, so obviously, because the armature is supposed to have, is it the armature? Let's drop Diver C animations back in, or diver animations back in. That'll tell us right away. Yeah, so you can see how this has an animator right here, whereas Diver C does not. And I think that's because Diver C doesn't have any animations. We've told it to import the animations, but since it doesn't actually have any, it's confused as to what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an idle animation. It's not going to do anything, just going to be there for the sake of having an animation so that it'll automatically spawn the animator, because I don't want to have to worry about doing that manually. Why am I in weight paint mode? There we are. I mean, I know why I'm in weight paint mode. Why did you leave me in weight paint mode? Anyway, pose. So we're going to go ahead and just... And then we'll just... insert those two bones. And that's going to be our default animation. The mailman's here, I can tell, because he's smashing my mailbox. So now, when we import Diver C, it should have an animation. See, there it is. It doesn't even need to import one correctly. It just needs to exist. Unfortunately, it looks like that didn't actually take. Index was out of range. Man, Unity needs to check their shit better, because this is like core Unity shit. Okay, so the question is whether or not I need to import an animation correctly, or whether or not this works. No, it doesn't. I need to import an animation. God damn it. All right, you're making it complicated for me. So it looks like it's not a big fan of having this at -1. So I guess what we'll do is we'll just copy this and then paste it. I don't know whether or not this is going to work. I'm just trying to figure out what triggers the automatic setup. I guess I could just do it manually. It doesn't have to be this way. It looks like it's more trouble than it's worth. I should be able to just add an animator to this diver C object. But if I'm going to do that, I should move the animator over from the diver object. But it doesn't have an avatar, does it? So if we look at diver B animations here, which is down there pointing the wrong way, it's got animations already plugged into it, so it's trying to be in a pose that makes sense. You can see how it's got this avatar here. That animation avatar, I'm not actually sure what that does, but without that, I'm going to need to make sure that I have that plugged in correctly. I guess it's okay. We'll just copy this, copy component, and then we'll come over here into diver and paste it as new. The problem is this is on the wrong location. So if we paste this as new, what we're doing now is we are attempting to apply animations to diver, and then we're looking for something called armature inside of diver, but armature is inside of diver C. So what we actually need to do is move this animator over into diver C when we are ready for business. Let's just go ahead and add it to both for now. Where's the 1 pixel? There it is. So that should actually animate it. Let's go ahead and just take a quick look here. Both of these should be overlaid on top of each other. That definitely didn't work. Oh, did I not put the animator in? Is that the problem here? Of course, I forgot to put the controller in. Let's try that again, but with a controller this time. The diver B controller. Since that's a runtime animator, it won't actually do anything in scene edit. Yeah, so you can see that worked not perfectly. The character is 90 degrees off true. My assumption is that's because I've got it in both places. Let's try that again. No, it's... It may be that that we do have to have this in a specific orientation in order for it to work. Nope, that's the wrong axis. Is that the axis? It seems like it's backwards. That's correct. But you can see how it doesn't actually work. The diver B that we're looking at here, this is how it should look. You can see how it's got feet coming off and it's got all sorts of stuff happening. The other one we're looking at doesn't appear to have the feet. Why would the feet be wrong? It also doesn't appear to have the bent legs. To be honest, it looks like what it's done is it's just moved 90 degrees and not actually changed any of the bone rig. Don't tell me that I have to... What have I done wrong here? Let's remove it from diver, because this is not going to help, regardless of whether it's on or off at the moment. And diver C, this should be able to handle it. It should have, let's just move diver B so that it's not overlapped quite so much. Yeah, it's definitely not quite the same. So if we look at diver C, and then we come over here into the animator and pull it over into the other tab here. Shoop. These are the parameters, and if we were to change these parameters, we should get a different response, right? So you can see that it is doing something, but the lower legs are broken. So I renamed some of the bones, but I should have renamed them in both. So it looks like we might have to redo the animations, which is, I mean, no big loss. This is the extent of the animations here. So that's annoying. I redid most of them just the other day. The problem is that some of the bones were named wrong, and I think it's using a directory-based bone naming convention. So I renamed some of the bones here in the hips, and I think that means that all references to the bones of the rest of the leg are now invalid. What I don't get is why diver B animations is working okay, because this is the source, and it should have the same bone names. If we open up diver B animations as a file, and we also open up diver C as a file, I guess I already had that one open. All right, so Blender, could you behave? Thank you. This guy needs to go. Thank you. All right, so these are the two blend files that we've got. This one is the new one, you can tell because he's got the fancy mask. This one is the other one. You can see the bones in question are in the hips. I believe this is the only place I renamed bones. And I did so because they were named just garbage crap that didn't make any sense. So if we look down here at the bone in question, see how this is pelvis R001? There, scale pelvis R. And this is scale pelvis L. Those used to be named something else. This is a pelvis bone that will never be animated by the scaling system because it's not a scaling bone. These are scaling bones. So if I look over here on the new ship and I look at this bone, look at this fucking bone, thank you. That scale pelvis L. This one is also scale pelvis L. So why do the leg animations not work? Leg L, shin L, leg L, shin L. It might be easiest just to go ahead and create a diver C animations. If I'm going to do that, I can polish up the skeleton a little bit. I guess we might as well do that. Kind of a shame, kind of an annoying thing to have happen, but there's something. I knew that we were going to run into troubles when I started renaming bones. You got to be careful to get the bone names right the first time, you know? Let's go ahead and just continue renaming the bones until they're renamed to our Wait. What the heck is this? This isn't the modern bone rig. Did I import the wrong bone rig entirely? I'll feel really dumb if that's the case. Yeah, see? This is the wrong bone rig. Oh, you friggin' idiot. No wonder it's not working. There's like a whole bunch of bones that are wrong. Well, then we'll definitely have to create a diver C animations. That's embarrassing. I can't believe I did that. How the hell did I manage to do that? It was all that confusing FBX exports shit. So the main changes between this bone rig and the other bone rig are the number of bones in the elements here and here. The reason that those bones are now different is because I don't need to animate with them anymore. These are now in shader animations for the most part. I just have to position with them. So that means that I just merged a lot of these bones together in order to lessen the number of bones that were being animated at once. Lessen my load, you know? So I don't remember how to actually dissolve them. Do I say dissolve? Yeah, there we are. Dissolve. Dissolve. And we're going to want to dissolve both of these guys. Oh, good. So that leaves us with these bones here, which are going to need to be renamed. So this one is tentacle L, L1, L2. This is L5. It needs to be L3. And this is L8. It needs to be L4. Same with these sides. There we go. And that should allow us to get some decent positioning without having to worry too much about trying to get them to, you know, ripple and stuff like that, because we just position with this, we don't ripple with it. Obviously, we're going to have to rebind everything in a minute. That's okay too. So I think that this is fine. I think this is going to be okay. I do think I want that many bones. But we have hair bones and shit, and these were created before I knew what anything was going to look like, and they're clearly not going to be of any use to us. We definitely don't need them for this character. There you go. We can work on whether or not we need them for a different character, because some of our characters might have hair, but this one doesn't. So that is the bone setup we actually need. And if we take a look, there are some bones here that are specifically scale bones, like this one. We want to make sure that these are marked as what's it called? Non-deforming. See that check mark there? So basically we're going to go through and we're going to mark these as non-deforming. It doesn't actually matter in terms of when it gets exported, but in terms of when we actually create the animations, it does matter, because the animations, we don't want to accidentally grab bones that don't make any sense. So this pelvis bone is marked as non-animating, non-deforming, which is wrong. I had them backwards for some reason. That's fine. Notice that this is a little bit of a different structure than usual. Normally what will happen when you're doing bones is that the spine will be one set of chains going up from the butt. And what I've got here is a situation where it's actually split into two sets of chains going out from the belly button. And that's because we're swimming. It makes a lot more sense for us to rotate around our core rather than anchor with our feet. So this will allow us to do some animations that look a little bit more natural for a swimmer. At least a little bit more animations easily. All right, so this is going to be our new rig. We're going to want to map it correctly. So we're just going to go down here into modifiers, and we are going to delete the armature and then add it right back in. Boom. So at the moment, we're not going to worry too much about the actual binding, but we are going to check for a couple of basics. Like we want to make sure that this also gets bound correctly. So just delete that and then bring it back in. Nope. There. That should do. And that means that these should now be all set up correctly. If we come over here and we switch over into pose mode and we start to orient these, yeah, so you can see that we no longer have any of those weird streaky bits, but you can see how the feet are malfunctioning a little bit. If we select the feet, boom, these are set up with their own armature modifier set, so we don't have to worry about that. We can just leave it as is. We'll have to completely remodel the flippers eventually anyway. So this should be more or less correct. There are some bones that are likely to be more wrong than others. But we can rebind them later if we need to. So this is the animation bone, this little one, and you can see how it's not correctly bound to the upper belly region. See how that doesn't That doesn't work. And that's because the envelope for this tiny little bone is about 40 times bigger than it should be. And the envelope that we're supposed to be having, which is this bone, isn't properly grabbing some of the things we would like. Maybe what we actually need to do is bind the stomach to this bone. Let's go ahead and play around with weighting for a little while, and then we will figure out what we want. So if we were to click on this bone, and then we were to make sure that we're set up right, we are set up right. We don't want it to be red. That's far too dense, far too strong. Yes, just lower the strength. I can never remember which thing is strength and which thing is weight, but I think that weight is the one that is how red it will get if you keep clicking, and that's what I needed to be careful about. So if we were switching over to this bone now, and we were going to rotate just that one bone, God, I wish Blender had an option to not do that multi-bone selection that never made sense for anybody. Yeah. So this is not ideal, but it's way better than it was about 30 seconds ago. Normally what we might have to do is create like a correction shape key or something. I don't know whether or not I'm going to do that, but we could create a correction bone. Now the reason I'm so caught up on this is that in a normal animation sequence, Crisp Cat Games says, "Good afternoon, friends." I have no idea when they said that. Sorry, I was caught up in this shit and not paying enough attention to chat. So a big part of the reason why we're more concerned about the stomach deformation than your average animator would be is because this is underwater. We're going to be doing a lot of curls. We're going to be scrunching and twisting in ways that you don't normally have to worry about in games. But you do have to worry about in an underwater game because you want your character to not feel like they're getting crushed, right? You don't want your character to feel like they're losing mass like this. You really want your character to. Crisp Cat Games is just chilling and listening to me talk. Yeah, a lot of us stuck inside today. Might as well have someone talking in the background while you're doing your stuff. So we basically want to make sure that we don't get this compression. You see that compression? Let's go ahead and move the other arm for a second so that I can show you this a little bit better. Get out of the way. Both these arms. Go. Move. I'm sure that looks very natural. So how can I deselect everything? There we are. So if we select this guy, and this is the animation bone. So if we were to try and curl up, we would probably do something like this, right? And that's very clearly not right. It looks awful. But the problem is there's no actual way to weight this so that it doesn't look wrong. Even if we were to add a different weighting setup to these bones, there's no part of the motion that is going to push the belly into the proper position using those two bones. Those two bones are only ever going to cause mass loss. The closest we can do is we can really tightly bind them to this boy here. We could go with like a strength of 1, like this. And that'll get rid of all of the binding that we had from this guy, except for it didn't. Did I turn off auto normalize? That would explain a lot if I turned off auto normalize. No, auto normalize is turned on. That's weird. We'll just unpaint it. Boom. So that bone no longer has any paint. The bone below it still does though, so we're still going to get some motion. If we move, I guess that's not too crappy. Maybe we don't need to have a secondary belly bone that just serves to pooch out our belly or whatever. The reason I'm figuring this out now is simply because we have, well, that wouldn't be very realistic either way. That's not where the back bends. I'm figuring this out now because I won't be able to change this very easily later, so I want to make sure that it's right, you know? So if we're going to crush ourselves down, it's probably going to look like this, which, I mean, it's not great. Let's go ahead and add a crunch bone or two. So if we come into here, the question is where we want to add the crunch bone from and how many crunch bones we want to add. So this is what the character looks like. When we bend forward, we're going to want to have the capability to, well, let's go ahead and look up person doing crunches. Naked. Since everybody doing crunches has a shirt, and that's no good. So obviously I won't be showing you this. Come on, these crunches are barely crunches. I guess it's... working out naked could be better for you. Yeah, if you want to get sweat all over your floor. So basically the thing that actually happens when you bend forward depends on how much fat you've got, right? If you got fat, then it's going to pooch out because you're compressing all of that vertical fat into a shorter vertical distance, but you're not losing any fat. So it's got to go the other direction. If you don't have much body fat, then you don't fold in like you do when these bones fold. You just go flat. It's just like a board. I'm looking up crunches specifically, and there has been precisely one picture of a person doing a crunch. I guess the naked keyword. Actually, none of these people are naked either. I'm not sure what they're doing. What's another word for that, for crunches? Because clearly crunch is not what we're getting here. Let's go back to just doing crunches. Maybe I can find some folks that... See, these crunches, they're really tame crunches. I guess that's probably how they're supposed to be. They're not sit-ups. Let's try sit-ups. Person doing sit-ups. Naked. Yeah, this is more like it. Yeah, so you don't really get the compression, and that's what I want to avoid. I want to avoid this... There we are, back into pose mode here. And then we select this. Unfortunately for us, the arms are in the way, but you can see this compression here. That's just not what happens. That sort of happens if you have just a specific amount of fat there, because what happens is that your fat will crease. But it doesn't crease in. What actually happens is that crease is where your belly more or less normally is, and then you pooch out above and below. So it's actually like the exact opposite of this, right? So if we're going to add a bone to help with this, what we're going to want to do is add a bone which pulls these out. The question is, do I need a separate bone to control the... How much do I want to affect the bust, if at all? None of my characters are going to be tremendously, hugely busty. Even in the custom-made characters, there's going to be a limit on how far you can push that slider, just because otherwise it's going to be hard to do hand animations. You're going to be grabbing things a lot, and I don't want your hands to clip through your chest. So maybe I can just focus on fixing the belly. The other option is to do it with a shape key. The problem with a shape key is that it doesn't... I mean, a shape key is probably better because I could do a shape key based on how fat you are. But a shape key doesn't really take into account how far the bone has been pushed. I'd have to hook it up to the bone manually because driving bones don't actually map into Unity very well. Let's try doing it with a bone. Then we'll try doing it with a shape key if that doesn't work out. Man, once you add naked to the keyword, you get like 500 guys that are half naked, and it's catching the half naked. Let's go ahead and type in minus half. I don't need half naked guys. I need naked guys. Obviously, that's what we're here for, right? Yeah, these are really... Google's gotten really sloppy with the searches. I don't have safe search turned on. There is literally no dong. There are 500 guys here, and none of them are naked. The closest we get is someone who looks naked and has a giant camera in front of his dick. So I'm a little bit confused as to what Google thinks they're searching for. Maybe I should just do it in like a, I don't know. Mifa says I should search on Yandex.Russia. I'm not really sure that I want to try anything like that. At least not on camera. The real issue here is simply that Google is doing weird shit. They should, I mean, I haven't searched for any naked people on Google in a while, but I mean, they used to actually let you do that, right? They weren't filtering out every single nude result. Sit-ups, maybe it's because I put in person. You think that maybe they're like, oh, nobody who searches for porn would ever do person. Well, it certainly got a lot more dong on it once I take the people out, but it hasn't gotten any more sit-ups. In fact, now it is mostly naked people and nobody doing sit-ups. I guess nobody does sit-ups naked. No, just doesn't exist. Yeah, this is really, really stupid and bad. Oh well. I better close that in case I Alt-Tab, because it'll pop up in the, the crossbar that pops up, and it'll be like, oh, hey, look, you can see little... Yeah, you got it to dongs, you're fine. Well, either way, let's put in a bone and see if we can get the bone to make the belly work. So the bone we're going to add is going to be coming off of this guy here. So we're just going to extrude a bone. And we might use this bone for... there are two kinds of things we can use this bone for. We can use it for moving the belly, but we can also use it for scaling the belly if you pick a fat character, rather than doing what's it called? Morphs. I'll probably still do morphs instead, though. Do I want to do it that way? Because if I do it that way, I need two bones here. I need a motion bone and a morph bone. They have to be separate. No, well, let's just keep that to morphs. So what we're going to do is we're going to rip that bone off of the baseline. And then we're going to move it so that it is in roughly here-ish, I guess. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Let's see whether or not that works out. Let's name it belly. And we will go ahead and see how that works out for us. So to have this belly bone work, we're going to need to reset our armatures and then re-add them. Blau. Let's just go ahead and see what sort of parameters we've got just on the default. So yeah, so you can see how that gives us a lot of control over the belly structure. It's sort of morphed into a lot of the other front structures, so we're definitely going to have to do some weight painting. But we'll just take a look here and see what sort of values we get out of this. So this is basically what we had before, but you can see that the existence of this belly morph, what it does is it produces this really strange setup because it's stabilizing the belly part, meaning that when we pull this forward, the belly actually pushes down into the crotch like that. But the idea here is that when I animate something like this, I'll change this belly bone so that it gives us more of a worthwhile visual, something a little bit more like just trying to figure out the best way to do this, and I think that it's going to be through mostly translation. We're going to definitely have to be careful about how that affects the chest, because obviously that's going to result in some unusual fat propagation. But that's way better than what we had before. That is viable. Good. Let's go ahead and repaint it so that it's not quite so so effective on some of these other areas. So to do that, we're just going to select the skeleton and then select the body and then go into paint mode. And then when we shift click on one of these bones, it'll pop up as the morph, the bone we want to morph. If we take a look, you can see that this setup here is, so what we want to do is we want to cut the belly bone off from affecting the upper areas, but you can see the belly bone doesn't actually go very far, not as far as you might think. So we're just going to gently cut back a little bit, and then we're going to have to go in and modify here. It's not going to be too challenging, but it's going to be something where we have to be a little bit careful not to screw it up. There we are. That should do. And then when we come back over into here, this is the upper chest area. And when we bend, we want to make sure that this is like not really ideal. And the reason for that is because this is so far above the belly fulcrum that when we bend in, what we're doing is the stable belly region down here is making us do mass loss there, because there's always going to be some kind of mass loss. The good news is we can easily adjust however we want, but what we want to make sure of is that we don't accidentally make it so that we can't properly adjust. So there's a couple of things we have to look out for, and I'm not actually sure whether this is going to work. It seems to have worked so far, but there's lots of stuff left. Now this isn't particularly realistic in terms of how the chest is getting compressed. It's not terrible. I doubt anybody will notice, but there is plenty of mass loss happening there. I think we're going to be okay though. So the other thing we want to test is if we go over into one of these other object modes. If we want to turn, we do a lot of turning and we need to make sure that it works. So if we were to select these bones and turn along them, you can see how we get this twist going. And basically we want to make sure that that twist works. Well, that actually didn't turn out too bad, did it? So if we take this belly, it's hard to see because there's so many bones in the way. You can see how we've got this very straight line. If we were to twist it, boom, realism. How nice, right? And we can, of course, adjust it as we need to if we wanted to change exactly how much mass we have where. That's something we can certainly do. So that works great. All right, I was really worried that wasn't going to work at all, but it actually works out pretty well. And then there's one more axis, of course, and that's this one. And I need to make sure that this crease here feels natural. It doesn't right now. It feels unnatural. We have a tremendous amount of mass loss there. And it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do anything about that with the belly. I think that's going to be okay, though. That's an area where nearly every game has significant mass loss. Nobody seems to care, so we're not going to care. It's something where you're not going to be staring at it a lot. Your character might huddle forward, or any diver might huddle forward for long periods of time, but they're not going to huddle sideways for long periods of time. Last question is bending backwards, which happens more than you might think. So you can see how what we've got here is the exact opposite problem. We got mass conservation when we need mass loss, but just a little bit of motion, and we can, oh, that's a little bit not right. Not 100% sure what the best option here is. Certainly better than it was before. It's not great, though. All right, so that's going to be our bone structure for this particular diver setup. The only other thing to question is whether or not we need bones for this rig. So let's go ahead and test that before we move on. This bone here is the head bone for scaling. This is the actual bone. The jawbone is something we're not going to be using in the diver. The jawbone will only be used for surface people. But we'll leave it in here for now because it helps to stabilize the head without me having to do a lot of weight painting. So as you can see, what we've got with the backpack is the backpack isn't properly binding to the head bone. We're going to see whether or not we can get it to properly bind to the head bone without, doing too much bullshit. I don't think we rebound it. Yeah, this is from the old armature, so we're going to go ahead and rebind it. The reason we didn't rebind it before is because it's got a very special binding situation, because the automatic weights need to be rebound pretty aggressively because these are going to screw it up. So if we go into pose mode here, you can see that the whole backpack will crush in this really awkward way, which is not what we want. So we're going to have to repaint some of it. The question is, can we get these to properly connect to the head using weight painting? And I think we might be able to. Let's try it. Weight paint. So first off, let's weight paint the backpack to properly attach to this backpack bone, which it should be like 99% of the time. That should be pretty much everything. If we drag this bone, you can see everything. Yep, that's everything. So then what we want to do is we want to bring down the strength quite a bit and select this bone and see if we can get it to properly hook into the back of the neck there. Let's pick an angle that's not going to give us grief. Okay, I can only paint one of the sides. It's a mirrored object. I forgot about that. You'd think that Blender would be okay with painting on the unmirrored side, but it's not. Okay, so we're going to have to go full red here, and then the idea is that we can go softer back here. And we can probably use a smooth brush to clean it up a little. Yeah, that's fine. So I don't think we need a dedicated bone for that. I do need to know what the heck is happening over here. It looks like we missed a piece. So let's go back into full strength mode and find the piece we missed and fix it. Yeah, see? Got like a little bit of a green knob in here, which needs to be red. So there. Perfect. Now that should work regardless of how we twist our head, but you can see that we've got some other, oh, no, that's just we've got several bones selected. Yeah, so you can see how it works regardless of how we twist our head, but there's a lot of mass loss. It's far from ideal. That's fine. I don't care. We can always redo it later if we need to. All right, so we're going to save that. Mifa says, nice solution. I'm not sure which solution he's talking about because I don't pay enough attention to chat. Sorry about that. Right, that should be everything we need. So now all we need to do is save it as an animator. Hold on a second. I'm going to pop up Phoenix Wright while I dick around with file structure. Diver C animations.blend. I guess that was easier than I thought it would be. There we are. So I'll bring you back. Boom. All right, so this is the same file, but now it's named something else. And the reason for that is because in the animations file, we're going to get rid of nearly all of this extra crap that we're not using. Oh. We'll have to get rid of that in the other one too. We could get rid of the helmet and the backpack and stuff, but I think that it would make more sense for us to animate with those intact. So we're just going to hit save, and then we're going to go over into the animation section and begin our tour of animations. Only problem is we got like specific sets of animations that we need, and I don't remember them. So we're going to come over here into Unity, and we're going to pull up Diver B animations. Oh, there's already pulled up. And you can see all these. We're going to use those. I'm going to pull them off to the right-hand side so that you can't see them, and I can. That unfortunately means that I won't really be able to see chat very well, but it's okay. I'll work at it. So over here on the dope sheet, we switch this over into the action editor, which will let us name these actions. And this is what Unity disabled when they decided that they no longer wanted to support Blender. So this is when you go in and you hack Unity to have it import from Blender, you just say yes instead of false. Instead of false, you say true. Works fine. But we're going to need to rename these things. So we're obviously going to need an idle. Let's go ahead and delete these because they are obviously not the keyframes we want. And we'll go down here and we'll put the keyframes we want in. So there's a lot of ways for us to do this, but the first and most basic is that we're going to want to pay attention to our core bone here, which I call bone because I'm very clever like that. This is the bone that allows us to move the character within the space of the world, basically. So basically, if we're going to do this as an idle animation, we're going to want to be something like this, right? We have an option as to how close we want to get to the 0 mark. And this will matter, basically, we're moving around that red icon in the middle there, we're moving that around as the character in the game. So where we want the center of the character to be, all of the turning and all that stuff is going to happen around this dot. So that means that it would make most sense for it to be right here in the middle of our center of mass, or directly above like this. That'll just give us a little bit more of a more natural feeling when we're turning. Oh, I hope you can't hear me sip that drink. It's always louder than I think. And that's one of my personal pet peeves. Every time I go to Twitch and I try and find someone to watch, they're like, let me just have this bowl of soup and these 85 chip bags and this. It's like, stop eating. Why are you streaming yourself eating? Just stop streaming and go eat. I guess people like to eat together. It's sort of like a basic togetherness thing. But it really annoys me because I hate that sound. All right, so our gentle neutral stance is going to be with these out quite a bit. And the reason for that is simple. It stabilizes you. I think we want it wider than that. There we are. That'll do. So there we've got it relatively stabilized. And we'll just go ahead and maybe move the neck a little bit. And that's it. That's all we need. There we go. We're not actually going to do any animations here, which might seem a little bit strange. They're just going to be 10-frame loops that are static. Later on, when we're absolutely sure that this is the setup we want, we can go back in and change them. Obviously, this should be called idle, which I thought I typed. I'm not sure why it... Are you fucking kidding me? Fine, fuck you. So for some reason, it decided that it was going to randomly start working on a different animation called something else entirely because... So now we have another animation that's worthless. And we'll go over there into idle 001, name it something else, and change it. Cookie042 says hello. Hello, Cookie. We are doing very, very primitive animations for our diver today. This is going to be our idle inverted. Now, the obvious thing here is that it's just upside down. So it's like this. But we want to make sure that it's in the right spot. We don't want to have behind our back like this. So we're just going to pull the character down to below like this. Other than that, it's the exact same. We don't really care at all. Just copy, and then we come over here and paste. There we go. Now we could do, ooh, the bones are all, dang it, hold on. I don't want that bone rigging there, so we're going to try that again. And copy and paste. There you go. Go back over into idle and make sure that that is also fixed. I did that just for testing purposes, and I forgot to untest it, so there we go. So we need a couple more animations, quote-unquote animations. Go ahead and keep it with the idle. Idle inverted left and idle inverted right. Idle inverted left and idle inverted right. What are these? Oh, it's for... I don't actually know what this is for. If we go over into the animator and we take a look and we try and find idle inverted left and idle inverted right and see what the heck I did there. Here's our idle inverse, which is just idle inverse. Here's inverting, which is just a difference between inverting left and inverting right. But that's like the action of turning over. It's not an idle action. I don't think I use idle invert left and idle invert right. I think the idea was, oh, is it uninvert? Because idle invert and idle uninvert. I think uninvert might look a lot. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I don't see any sign that there is an idle inverted left and idle. There is an idle left and an idle right. So those are actually, I see what that is. That's for me looking in a direction. Okay. Really? All right. Well, then we'll build it. What did I do here? Why do we have more? That was weird. I must have accidentally clicked on something when I wasn't looking. Anyway, let's create a new one, which we'll call idle right. And we'll just start to create these things. Yeah, there is an idle left and an idle right. It's just that alphabetical order put the inverted left and the inverted right above them, so I was confused. Anyway, if we're going to idle right, that means we're going to want to look right. Oh, for fuck's sake. All right, we're going to go back to idle. We're going to copy this, copy it. We're going to come over here, and we're going to fucking paste it. Stay pasted, you asshole. There we go. We just make sure that that didn't happen here. Good. Now idle right. So for idle right, we're going to go ahead. My bad. For idle right, we're going to go ahead and delete one of these, like this broken one here. And then we're going to overwrite this one. So just basically we're going to be looking right, and that's kind of what this setup is. Obviously that's going to imply some motion of the neck and the head, but 90% of the neck and the head animations are actually controlled in IK. So those animations are unlikely to actually carry through. It's the rest of the body that needs to be properly rigged to be looking in a direction like this. And now to give you the proper balance when you're doing this sort of thing, you're going to extend one of your legs over this way. Look at that mass loss. We're going to want to repaint the legs a little bit because we certainly don't want that. Still, we don't need to repaint them in this file. It's in another file. Animation is stressful. Animation's only stressful if you screw up. Welcome to software in general, I suppose. So, and then over on this side, we can use these to sort of stabilize in a more peculiar way. And then we'll just move this arm out of the way. We're going to have to repaint that too. That's not quite right either. That's all fine though. Those are weight paint jobs I know we can do. And then we'll extend this guy. And then we'll just examine the belly real quick. Yeah, it doesn't look too shit. So that's fine. Mifa says that's why he does animation last. Unfortunately, in this game, if I left animation to last, it would look like total shit for a really, really long time. And the only way I can stay focused on this kind of game dev is if I, if I don't think that it's totally shitty. So we have an idle right. In the previous version of this, I created an idle left, but I believe that we can invert an animation mirrored across the bones in Unity. Let's just take a look. You can't see me do this because you are not involved. I guess if you can, it's not readily obvious how. Okay, we'll just do it here in Blender. It's not that big a deal. All you really need to do is copy this, and then when we create an idle left, we just paste it in flipped. Boom. See? Since we are very rigid about naming our right and our left bones the same thing, that works great. To be honest, I think there might be a bug in the hands, the fingers, but the fingers should be all IK, so it shouldn't matter. Yeah, that's idle left. So now we've got our idle left and our idle right. We're going to want to do our inverted idle left and inverted idle right. Only problem is I don't remember whether or not it is right according to global space, in which case it's that way, or right according to local space, in which case it's that way. I think that it's to global. I think we need to have him look that way, away from us. So let's go ahead and do that. And I keep saying him, even though it's a generic character that isn't a he or a she yet. You get to decide that. All right, so this is a more significant turn, but there's a reason for that. The reason is because the inverted idling is generally done when the player is actually close to the camera. And so I want to get a more significant dynamic set of values for it, you know? Now the backpack needs to be adjusted. It's not really very feeling quite right yet. That's fine. We'll make it feel right. We'll do that. Sorry, I'm tweaking these. These are always the hard part because any animation knowledge you have probably isn't about random tentacle things that aren't attached to the human in any sort of meaningful way. Still, should be fine. We'll just rig it up. I think we want it to be a little bit wider of the leg than that. There we are. So I don't think we need to have a giant arm coming up to obscure the camera. The camera is going to be pointed along this axis here, so we're going to just bring that arm down so that it's not in the way. And maybe we'll bring it in so that it's not cutting through your loop at all. And this arm, we can do a little bit of energy with it just to try and get it to feel a little bit more interesting. That should be fine. So we'll just go ahead and insert that, and then we'll copy it and insert it over here. We're going to mark that as a forced element, and then we're going to duplicate this, call it idle inverted left, and just use the same paste function, flipped. No problems. All right, so that's our idles. Let's, darn it, Blender, or darn it, Unity rather. I want to actually get to see things here. So we've got idle left, idle right, invert right. Oh, we got to actually do the inversions. So let's go ahead and do that. If we grab this idle inverted and we copy this, and then we go over into idle. Oh, idle inverted left needs to be protected. That's fine. We can go ahead and create a new one, which we'll call idle invert. What you call it? Invert. It's not an idle motion. Invert left and invert right. So if we're going to invert left, I'm just going to paste this in. These are one of the very few things we're actually going to put in as an animation, like an actual thing that happens over the course of the game. Because we actually have to animate you turning over. That's not going to be in shader. This one, in this case, it is inverting to, that's clearly an inverting to the right. So we're just going to name it invert right. And basically, when we're inverting, the way it actually happens is that you start with your chest and then it ripples down. So it's like shwoof, right? So we're just going to basically have curves for these. One of the ways to do that would be to edit the curves. An easier way to do that is just to offset them manually. So that's what we'll do. We're going to get a really, really nice aggressive turn for this. So that'll be fun. And you can see how what we've got here is some creasing on the belly, and that's because the belly bone has to be adjusted. It's no big deal. I'll just trying to make this feel right. I pushed it on purpose to see how far I could make this work using the belly bone. You can see the belly bone isn't quite, needs to scoop out a little bit more belly down there near the hip. We've got a little bit of an aggressive hip action. This region in general needs to be worked on, but I think this should be a fine animation setup. So the idea here is that these legs have been kicking in the other direction to try and turn you around, right? We're also going to want to pull the arms in because they are supposed to be not dragging you down. I might want to have one of the arms lead and one of the arms, trail. So if that's the case, then this arm has been pushing us back. And this arm is pushing us around. I think that is not a bone. That's a shoulder. That's the scale bone, so this is the actual shoulder bone. We'll just move that forward. Create ourselves a nice little push across the body like this. Do we have a wrist bone? Oh my fucking god, we forgot to put in a wrist bone. Yeah. That's not what I want to do. All right, so we created this file and it's worthless. It's completely worthless. So we're gonna have to start over. How much fun. So the problem here is that we don't have any fucking wrist bone. Nope, no wrist bone. And so generally speaking, I recommend that you don't screw up like this. But it happens. It's the sort of thing where it's always going to be an issue at some point. You're gonna screw something up at some point. Let's switch over into pose mode and then reset all of these. And then what we're going to do is add in a wrist bone, which is just going to be done by subdividing this particular object, which we have to do in edit mode. Edit. That didn't work. Okay. Subdivide. There you go. Obviously, that's not the right spot for our wrist bone. So we're actually going to move it until it is in the right spot for our wrist bone. That's more or less right. Now let's name it. I think there's something a little bit wrong with that. Yeah, it's not quite right. It's floating. That's better. All right, so that was exciting. Now that we have set this up, we might as well fix the painting while we're here, since we've got to repaint it anyway, right? So object mode, select the flesh. Actually, I'm gonna just delete the rig and do it again. Automatic weights. Now select the bones, then select the flesh, then select paint. All right, so this is going to be the same basic setup. We're going to just do a little bit more weight painting, try a little bit more rigging. The reason I was so not rigging last time, so the reason I didn't look into it very much, is just because it's so annoying with the new setup where you've got to like manually deselect every bone that you ever set up. It's really pretty crap. But you see this here? This is a real no-no. This is a huge amount of mass loss above the leg, which is just obviously incorrect. So what we actually want to do is bind that to probably this hip bone here. So we'll go ahead and try that. We'll reduce the strength. We don't want it to be super overwhelming. And now, when we select this bone down here, we definitely still have some problems. So we'll bring down the weight, and we will depaint. And now we'll bring the strength way down, and we'll do some depainting up here. Unfortunately, the skeleton is really, really loud. It's hard to see what's going on because of this really aggressive skeleton. But we definitely see that there is a nub happening here. Maybe I should go in and, unfortunately, it's a real pain in the ass to switch over to the skeleton, and then back, which you'll see in a minute here. Yeah, see, it didn't stay. fuck you. There we are. So now I can actually see through the bones a little bit, and that's going to be good enough to let us try and equalize this. And we're willing to accept some mass loss. We don't have the right setup to have no mass loss here on the leg, but I don't want to have so much that it's noticeable. I guess the problem here might be that the hip joint isn't in an ideal location. If we go into the skeleton again, and we're in edit mode here, this is where we put the hip joint, right here in the in this region. So when we actually look at how that works, it's all twisting around that hip joint. What we may want to do is move that hip joint so that it's not there. In order to do that, though, we're going to want to disconnect it from the leg morph that we've got here. If we take a look, this is the scale morph, and for some reason unknown to me, it isn't actually straight. I think that's an error. I think I might have screwed that up. So we're going to want to select the bone here, and we're going to want to scale X0 and scale Y0 so that it's a straight down bone, because that's kind of the point. And then what we're going to want to do is disconnect these guys. And then we can drag them into a different position, like say there. Now, because they are rotating around a point that's closer to the surface, there's a lot less damage over on the side, even if we paint it wrong. The problem is that there will be damage in other ways. So if we move over into pose mode here and we rotate this bone in, you can see how we get damage above now. It's not terrible. And similarly, we have to make sure that when we're rotating around the bone, you can see how the twist happens near the outside. That's actually not terrible. I don't believe they normally put bones this close to the surface. This feels a little bit unusual. It'll definitely work for our needs, so I guess we'll keep using it. All right, so if we go back over into object mode and then switch into weight paint, we can fix this up for one last push. We're going to want to finish deleting up there because it's obviously wrong. There we go. And we're also going to want to just buff this out because we've changed it so that the weight loss isn't that big a factor anymore. So now we have some weight loss on the hip itself. I wonder if we can just create a crease. Can we get away with a crease here? Probably not. No, the crease is a little bit too much. So if we would just use this to reduce that crease. Yeah, that'll be fine for now. We still got some friggin' crap on the top there. Look at that. I thought I already cleared this, but I guess not. There we go. All right, so that's more or less how I want that. Let's go ahead and set this belly bone up a little bit better. So the belly bone needs to be brought down at the top here. We don't need it to go that high. But we do need it to go higher down low. And then we'll just use a smooth. There we are. That should be better. Then we got some other bones that we could use some work with, like this guy. Blender, would you please let me select shit? Jesus, there we are. So the problem is, if you change over into wireframe view on Blender bones like this, first off, it's clearly not wireframe. It's clearly not wireframe view. What it is it's X-ray view. So I don't know why it's labeled wireframe. But if you're thinking you've got X-ray view so you can click on stuff, you are wrong. You can only click on the wires. which you can't see. Brilliant! So I'll show you. If I click here, nothing. Oh, that actually got selected. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I guess I'm wrong. Good. I like being wrong when it makes things easier. So if we were to raise this arm up, you can see that there is a considerable amount of flesh coming along with it. What we normally would do is not actually raise the arm like that. We would raise the arm up by by raising it here and then raising it here. Like that. And you can see that if we do it like that, it's fine on top, but the bottom, it kind of flabs out. So we're going to just reduce the bottom here. And the question is, which one of these bones is dragging it along? Clearly it's this one. So we'll just bring that weight down to 0 and get rid of it. And that's fine. There are a couple of other things that are worth considering. For example, this rig here. The idea is that when you rotate the arm, you don't want to rotate it here at the joint. So if we were to rotate it here, like this, we get all sorts of compression problems along the body. You see that? How it's like deforming things and creating slices and getting nasty. If you rotate it down here, it makes more sense. But of course, it creates a crease in the middle of the arm, which is why you generally want to just smooth that out. So let's see if we can use the smoothing. Yeah, it looks like we can. So we'll just... It looks like we're catching some elbow smoothing in here. We'll have to fix that. So what we've got causing the damage is what bone is that bound to that's getting it all sorts of damaged here? It's not the elbow. I thought it was, but it's not. Is it the hip? Yeah, it's the hip. I must have accidentally nudged it when I was painting the hip. Oh, is it more than the hip? Is there another bone that it's nudging on? Nothing on the lower body. Nothing on the back. No? What bone is doing that? Is it the belly? Oh, it's the belly. How bizarre. I must have nicked it when I was painting the belly. All right. So the idea here is that this arm should rotate naturally around the y-axis like this without causing too much in the way of deformation. And you can see that that feels fairly natural rather than feeling crimped. There are some things about this that aren't perfect, but we're fine. I don't care about them. We've got the same issue down here, though, so we're going to go ahead and rotate. And you can see how it crimps because it's really, really aggressive. So we're just going to smooth it away. It looks like the belly has some of this as well. My guess is that what's actually happening here is that the auto-normalize is screwing up. And the auto-normalize is saying, oh, well, there's not 100%, so we'll just go find the most recently added bone and fill it in with that. It's like, oh, great. Thanks. No? No, I guess it's not the belly this time. It is, however, somewhere in the lower body. Probably the hip then. Yeah, so... No, it's got more than just the hip to it. Well, that's not causing any more deformation, so the hip is now done. No. No. This is really annoying. It's the neck? How did the neck get bound here? Some weird shit happening today. I shouldn't have even been editing the neck. There we are. So now, if we come down here, and maybe we'll smooth it a little bit more because we obviously caused some damage with that nonsense. Oh my god. So I think what's actually happening here is that it's assigning a random bone instead of blurring into this bone. So to fix that, we're going to fucking bind everything to that bone perfectly. Make sure we didn't accidentally paint the legs. There. Can you see how this is now actually part of the bone that we're trying to actually edit instead of randomly wrong? Right, good. So now we're gonna go ahead and fill that in a little bit because the whole point here is to fill it in a little bit. And now we blur it. Oh, look. Now it's correctly blurring instead of randomly assigning verts to like the neck and the belly and shit. It looks like there is a little bit more vert damage here. So we're going to go ahead and force these verts to behave 100%. There we go. So when we rotate around, you can see how now we get this twist happening in the middle of the arm, which isn't exactly ideal. So we may want to push it just a little bit further up the arm. Like that. And then we'll smooth. There we are. And now that should be fairly good. Yeah, that's not too bad. We're not getting a lot of, I mean, there's compression happening here, but you shouldn't be turning your arm that way. That's not how your forearm works. In the direction that you should be able to turn your forearm, which is this way. Could be better. I think what we'll want to do is just go ahead and assign a little bit more mass here. Because I think what's happening is that it's twisting along the arm in such a way that it's ending up compressing. And that's not really what we want to have happen. So the way to fix that is to aggressively create a gradient that prevents that twisting from being super noticeable. Not 100% sure that's going to work with this arm, though. Not 100% sure I even know what I'm talking about. Good enough. Good enough for now, at least. If we look at the wrist, we definitely have some nasty loss here. This is obviously going to be really bad looking. Did I put the bone in the wrong place? Yeah, if I look at this, it needs to be further in. So we're going to go into edit mode here. Edit mode on the skeleton, please. And it's just way too far back. I'm not sure why I put it that far back, but that's in the wrong spot. That's more in line with what we need. Maybe even, yeah, that's probably better. So now, if we come over into object mode and we select the skeleton and then we select the character and then we go into paint mode and then we rotate this. No, that's the thumb. There. You can see how now it's all damaged because we have to repaint it a little bit. But That should be pretty easy. Yeah, that's much better. What is this divot? There shouldn't be any more rotation left on this guy. Oh, he was still rotated. That's... No? What's causing this divot here? Is that divot baked into the mesh? It doesn't seem to be. Something is causing a divot. Let's go ahead and take a look. If I move the whole arm... Yeah, you see there? That divot? So there's something still attached to that vert. This is the worst time I've ever had trying to make this shit work. I don't know why it's being such a pain in the ass today. Good enough. All right, so that should be what we need. Yeah, we're going to call that fine. So we're going to save that, Diver-C blend, and then we're going to save it again over the animators, Diver-C animations. And then we're going to go do the animations again. Brilliant, right? Well, the good news is that we got plenty of time. It's Saturday, and nobody is going anywhere. Shops are still all open, but nobody's visiting them. Now, the reason I came back over here into Unity is simple. I need to take a look at the animation list again. Hooray! So we'll just go over into Diver-B animations here and fold that down. And there we have our animations. So we're just going to copy that. I'm going to move this so that I can see it. But if I do that, I can't really see Twitch chat. So I'm going to move Twitch chat too. There we go. So this is now Diver-C animations. We saved over the other version of Diver-C animations. We're going to go over into the animations window. We're going to clear this guy because we never use that guy because that's for compositing. And I accidentally forgot to clean up the masks and stuff while I was doing other stuff. So we're going to just, yeah, just going to clear some of these masks away. There we go. So this is the skeleton, and here is our very first animation. Just switch over to Animations, Action Editor, call this Idle. We're going to go over here, move that to 1. And we're going to just not do any deleting or anything because it will randomly create a new animation for no reason if we do. So we'll just undo that arm that we did, and then we'll do the exact same motion stuff. It should go a little bit faster this time because I know more what I want. I don't have to get confused all the time. So the camera is going to be somewhere around here, and the center of mass is going to be somewhere around here. That should do it. So that's going to be where we want to be for our idle, and we'll just go and put in some idling bits. We're going to want to pull these out and make them wide. Like that. And that should be fine. We'll just go ahead and save that as an idle. What happened? Oh, that was weird. Location, rotation, scale. There we go. And just copy that and paste it in 10-ish. And then delete this guy. Boom, gone. And there shouldn't be any chance of us doing that problem we had before. So there's our idle. I'm going to duplicate this. We might as well go ahead and do the idle right and the idle left while we're here. So with the idle right, we're just going to want to move some of these bones so that we're looking to the side. And then we'll go ahead and move this bone to give it some nice curve. And you can see the belly is a little too static, so we're just going to pull it in line with a little bit of a rotation. No big deal. Looks fine. So now that we've done that, we just want to rig some of these things. First off, we don't want this arm to be here because the camera might be looking through here if the character is zoomed pretty far in, and we don't want that to get in the way. We also want to make sure that these tentacles are properly balanced so that it feels like they're trying to hold us in position instead of just being floppy. Now, if we wanted to, we could then just adjust these legs a tiny bit so that they feel a little bit more natural. There we go. What happened to the... What happened to the fucking twist? Why did it untwist? Because I hit tab? What a pain in the ass. Alright, so we're going to just recreate everything because apparently Blender is being a little baby. If you press the wrong thing in Blender, it just screws you up forever. Same with ZBrush. I wish that these had some way of not screwing you up when you randomly hit the wrong button on the keyboard. I don't need it to not have buttons on the keyboard or anything. I just need to be able to undo whatever damage I caused by accidentally having fat fingers. Because guess what? I got fat fingers. That looks pretty good. Now let's see if I can get this to save without randomly screwing me up. Hooray! We'll just copy that and then paste it. There we go. That's idle right. And then duplicate that. Idle left. Paste flipped. There we are. Beautiful. I've been talking into the mic for too long. My throat's getting sore. I promise you it's nothing like a deadly virus that will come through Twitch and eat you. It's just that I don't talk for very long before my voice gives out. Even when I'm mumbling like this, I wish I had a voice that could take a little bit more activity, a little bit more aggression. Why is this all yellow? I don't know. I guess I just have more of it selected or something. So we're going to duplicate this. It's going to be our idle inverted. And basically we're just going to invert. Shabloom. There we go. So when we're inverted, we have a slightly different setup in terms of how the player should be seeing things. Unfortunately, I did this at frame 6, meaning that if I move it, it's going to screw up. Whatever. Just redo it. We have a little bit of a different priority in terms of what the player is likely to see, so we're going to just put the arms down because there is a strong chance that the player has a camera very, very close up. If I rotate like this, it's not going to look right, is it? No, it's not even close to being right. I don't want to rotate these separately, but I guess I have to. The problem is it's not going to be symmetrical, which means it's going to be... That's X. That's Y. That's Z. All right, so rotate Z 10. Rotate Z negative 15. What? Rotate ZZ 10. So that's negative 15. And that's 15. There we go. That ought to give us a little bit of fun. If we rotate this rotate YY negative 45, and then over here, rotate YY 45. That'll give us a little bit of sort of a feeling like you're bracing yourself a little bit. See what I mean? And then we can pull these legs down and apart a little bit. Just to make it feel a little bit more like you are braced against something, because this is something where you're often going to be using this in enclosed situations and stuff like that. I don't want it to feel quite the same. Copy. Paste. No, don't paste it, flip, just paste it. There we are. It's not symmetrical. I guess that's okay after all. So that's going to be our idle inverted. Then we're going to do an idle inverted right and an idle inverted left. So we're just going to create a new action, call this idle inverted right. And it's going to be stage right, not actor right, or not audience right. So even though we flipped upside down, we're still going to be going that way, even though it's now actor left. So I need to double check something, but I'll do it after I save this animation. And once again, this is going to be something where the player is likely to see this up close, so it's worth trying to make sure that the belly looks relatively realistic. That ought to do. We got some creasing happening back here on the butt. Why? So apparently we've just got a bad rig. Yeah, you can see how that's obviously creased wrong. My guess is that the back here is bound in the wrong areas. We'll go through and fix that. It's not something we fix in this file. It's in the other file. We'll just call that. So that's us looking that direction. And again, we don't want this to be in the way of the camera, so we're going to pull it down. That should be good. Now we'll just bring these tentacles into position. There we go. Just bring this foot down so it's not in the way of the camera. There we go. Just save that. Copy. Paste. What happened? Well, we'll fix that in a second. I accidentally copied 2 frames. That's what happened. Delete. There. That's idle inverted left. Over here on idle inverted right, we're going to also want to delete that final. Yeah, that's good. So this is as far as we got before. And then we were beginning to work on the inversion itself, which is just a matter of grabbing this, copying just one of these, and then going up into idle, duplicating idle, calling it idle invert right, or just invert right. Except I think it's actually invert left. But either way, just invert it, and then come over here and paste that in, and pull that. So you can see that that's definitely not right. That's definitely... Oh, that is right. Okay, that's fine then. So once again, we're going to come into the middle here, and we're just going to make it lead with the body. And that means... You may think that that's too far with the neck. The neck is going to be mostly IK controlled, so I'm okay with it. And then we're just going to bring this down. And once again, we'll just adjust this belly. And then we will try and set this up so that it feels right. If we're powering around, then this arm is probably coming back. And this arm is probably... No, wait. So, yeah, this arm is the one that's coming back. I'm not thinking straight because I am a very bad animator. This arm is probably coming across the body, right? Because we're pushing. Oh, that's too much, too much. And we got a wrist bone. Well, hooray. If I can click on it, it's a very tiny bone. And now because we're twisting, I guess the legs should just go in the opposite direction. And of course, if we are powering the character's body around, these need to go counter. Maybe. Actually, I think this might be completely wrong. We'll know in a second. All right, so if we take a look at how this works, it powers us around, and then, okay, so that hand that goes across the body is really passive. See how passive that hand is? It's not necessarily wrong, but it's certainly not as aggressive as I'd like it to be. So we're going to go ahead and try and punch it up. Let's put in some extra rotation on both of these bones here. It's still very passive, but now I feel like we're tucking it in rather than being wrong. And the bones for this arm need to be way more aggressive. We're really going to want to push aggressively back. So, shtapow. See, there's no sense of getting ready for anything. It just kind of shwoops, and so that's why it feels so fakey right now. So what we're going to do is we are going to put in some just intermediaries, some moderate middle pieces here to give it that push, you know. So to do that, we're just going to grab some of these arms and make their flailing really apparent. So that's kind of like we are preparing, and then we push. The only problem is that we're beginning our twist already, so let's undo some of that twisting. So now we push. The tentacles probably need to be prepped, so let's go ahead and do some pretend prep on those. So let's look and swish. I feel like we need a second one out here just to make these tentacles feel a little bit more alive. Yeah, we could do better, but it's more or less fine. So let's go ahead and just go and duplicate it and make it left. So for that, we're just going to left. And all we need to do is copy each of these individually and paste them flipped. Oh, I've copied more than one frame. Yeah. Come on, just this one. Let's undo everything because I think I screwed it up somewhere. Oh, maybe I just needed to... Did that all I needed to do? Oh, okay, I can do it with all 3 frames at once. That's fine. Okay, so that's the other way. And it's the same basic setup. So now we also need uninvert, which is just the opposite. So we do need to actually do it separately, though, because the motions are completely different. But it should be fun. We have a little bit of practice now, so we'll just go over into idle inverted and copy that. And then we'll go over into idle and duplicate it and call this uninvert right. And we paste it into the first frame instead of the last frame. And we move this frame over. There we go, something like that. And now you can see it's like whoop, whoop, whoop. I actually don't know whether this is right or left because I've gotten completely confused. I think this is left. Yeah, we're going to want to do the same thing we did before where we spin around. I think we're going to go ahead and start with the frames in the middle here. No, we'll go ahead and start with the... Yeah, let's go ahead and start with the early frames, then we'll switch over to the late frames. Just because... No, I changed my mind. Obviously, I'm really, really easy to follow when I'm doing this sort of thing. Everyone really admires me for never having to, get confused or figure out what I'm doing. It's always right there at my fingertips. And then here's the belly, and once again, we're just going to set it up as a fix. This crease here is not going to be there for long. We're going to fix that in the weight paint mode later on. So that's going to be how we're going to look when we're halfway. And once again, we're going to want to power our way across. Just going to move some of these hand gestures into place here. Ah! There we are, something like that. And then, of course, we'll have the legs do the opposite. So that would be... I guess we'll just kick them out however we want. I should probably do like animation studies and try and figure out how this would actually look, but I don't care. That's fine. So if we take a look, it's wow, and then once again, we'll just put in some intermediary steps so that it doesn't feel quite so rushed and forced. And get these things prepped by having them move in the opposite direction. We just drop that in. Does that feel a little more natural? We need a little bit more depressurizing here. Yeah, that's more or less right. Let's go ahead and put in the After Effects. So if we are flipping, the tentacles really are not very realistic. They kind of just cycle, which isn't right, but I don't know how to make them look realistic, and we'll do this again later to try and figure out, you know, if they are supposed to look a certain way. We can just change it later, try and figure out how it would look best. Either way, we'll just put that in. There we are. So that's our uninvert left. And our uninvert right. Same ideally, but obviously. Why is it? Okay, I don't know what was causing that, but whatever. Copy and then paste flipped. Just make sure there's no, just making sure there's no sudden 180 degree. Yeah, see that right there? That one frame where we turn 180 degrees. So obviously that's very silly. What we'll do is we'll just copy it and then paste it flipped here as well. And we'll check there's no sudden deceleration glitching. That seemed to work fine. All right, let's just check uninvert left and make sure there's no glitching there. Seems fine. All right. We're also going to need swim fast, swim slow, tip up, tip down, turning. Yeah. So go back up to idle, duplicate it. Call this swim slow. So the swimming animations are all about these things doing all of the wriggling. So we're not actually trying to, oh, that's not what I want to do. We're not actually trying to animate a swimming motion because it's in shader. All we need to do is set it up so that the axes are correct. And in this case, the swim slow is a waggle in and out along this axis. So that should be fine. What we'll do is we will simply open it up a little bit and then bring it straight back in. And then we'll, of course, pull in our legs a little bit so that they're not quite as out there. But we are not going super fast, so we don't really need to worry too much about like being aggressively air or water, you know, we don't want to have various things sticking out, but it doesn't matter too much because we're not trying to move super fast. That's what I'm trying to say. So we'll just go with that. That's going to be a very simple, very basic setup. That's our swim slow. And then we're going to copy that and paste it in over here. And then we're going to want to swim fast. Swimming fast actually orients these on a different axis. We really do a beater. We are much more aggressive about this. And that includes really, really rotating this so that it is pointed the direction we need it to be pointed. Like that, more or less. And then we have to bring ourselves in line, which we do by pulling our hips way up and pushing our torso down, and then bringing our backpack up. And we're going to want to streamline our legs even more because now we are going for speed. We're going the distance. We're going for speed. He said nice back arch there. It's not going to be something that the player really looks at, so I'm not too concerned about it. If they're trying to zoom in on the back arch, they're going to get a face load of butt. So let's just bring these feet up, untwist them. They're a little bit twisted. And then we'll just have these legs a little bit more off from each other so that we can have one that is above and one that is below. And Alan Wyvern came by. Hello. I'm shocked you're not streaming something. So let's tuck in the arms a little bit more. Mifaz says that I've got a taste for arches. It might be a little bit severe, you're right. Let's just take it down a notch. Yeah, that's a lot less severe. And I think we want to adjust these hands because they look really weird. Come on, let me click on the one bone I need. There we are. If we just pull them in a little bit, we can make it feel a lot more natural. Yeah, I could bend the knees a lot more, but I don't want to because it's supposed to be like a super aerodynamic or aquadynamic sort of setup. I don't want it to feel too much like I don't want it to feel too much like it's got anything in the way. I want to feel like we're kind of going as fast as possible, being as streamlined as possible. So there's our swim fast. Backpack looks good, Alan says. Well, in Unity, which is here, this is what it currently looks like, the character on top. The materials are not set up right, though. I'll have to put the materials on. Let's do that right now. Why not? If we look at this materials for divers, we've got the diver gear, diver tentacles. There we are. Diver gear on the backpack too? No. Maybe. More or less, it looks like this. And it can be adjusted, so the character itself has a number of morphs, both bone and body shape. So we can get a wide variety of characters, and we can change the patterns and change the skin tone. It's all good. In fact, if I wanted to, I could change the skin tone right now. just update the renderer. See, now look, they're black. So it should be a fun setup. And I'm doing this specifically so I can swap out a lot of these meshes. Like there's, you might have a different backpack or a different helmet or whatever. Should be fine. Let's go up to idle and start to create a left and a right turn. So obviously this is not going to turn in, it might be tempting for us to just go like, oh, you know, look, we're turning. But here's the thing. It's actually got to pivot around the center point rather than just moving in the forward motion like that. This is definitely, this paint job I did, I really overlooked a core piece. We're going to have to fix that later. Obviously, we don't want that, but it should be okay. If we take the belly bone, we should be able to just adjust this a little bit to cover the front, but people probably aren't going to be looking too closely at this, so it should be fine. I think we can push this turn a little bit. Did I bend the wrong bone? I bent the wrong bone. So if we're turning, what we're going to want to do is tuck this leg in and pull this leg out. And we're also going to want to adjust this leg so that it is dragging. And we'll bring this arm up. And we'll pull this arm in. Might as well do a little bit of hand detailing here. And for the backpack, we're going to want to maybe even adjust it how it sits on the back to try and give us a feel like we are really being pulled by our backpack. I think that might be pretty good. And then just set it up to look vaguely nice. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out which bones need to be twisted more than others, and I think that these guys need the most twisting. There we are. And then we will bring these in. There we are, perfect. So that's going to be our turn. Let's go ahead and just do a little bit more adjusting, because what we're going to want to do is take into account that although we are turning only on this plane, that's not how humans turn. They actually do pivot slightly. So we're going to want to do a little bit of pivoting. That's more or less fine. Insert, copy, paste, right turn. I guess it should be turn right. We'll fix the other one in a second. There we are. So that should be just the exact opposite. So paste flipped and paste flipped. And go back up to left turn, name it turn left. There was one thing I wanted to check. We had a lot of these idles, and I'm not sure whether or not I was grabbing the right bones. Yeah, I was. Good. Because I can't use any bone that's named scale. Even though these bones are not marked as deform bones, Unity still lets me use them. Blender still lets me use them as deform bones. It really shouldn't. It should be like, no. But it doesn't seem to care. So that's most of what we needed. Alan says that I make it look easy. I'm making it look pretty half-assed, but that's kind of my thing. So let's take a look at the meshes and the animations that we've got. Tip up, tip down. Those are the only two that are left. So let's put in the tip up and the tip down. So we'll go back up into idle and just arrange for a tip up and a tip down. So here's a tip up. And the tip up is simply when the player is running into something. So we'll want to use the base bone too. There, this guy. So if we were to turn all of these 30 degrees, you can see that we get this kind of arch, which is a little bit severe. It's probably a little bit too much, so maybe 20 degrees. That's probably, well, the issue here is that this needs to be 45, and then these can be whatever else the rest is. That's fine. And then we can bring the pelvic element up a little bit, because what we're trying to actually do here is we're trying to say that you're going, like there's a ground down here, and then you're kind of scooping your way up. Sorry, I'm thinking about it and trying to do it at the same time. This is a very severe looking bend, but it's almost never going to be applied at 100%. It's going to be applied in the process of making an adjustment, so you're not going to have to worry about that too much. What we'll do is we'll pull these arms in, and then we'll have them brace forward, because chances are pretty high that you're tipping up because there's something in front of you. Like that. And obviously the backpack, we don't want the tentacles like that, because that's kind of cutting through the ground. It's no good. So we'll go ahead and do a little bit of backpack adjustment, and then pull these tentacles into position. Actually, I suppose first things first, we want to make it like that. That almost solves it. That's almost enough on its own. There we go. That's fine. Oh, for fuck's sake! Good. I can undo it. So that should do. You will be able to see him work in game if you hang around for another 20 minutes or so. And then we will duplicate this, call it tip down. Cement it. So tipping down is basically the opposite. I don't know why I did that. That was dumb. We have to go grab the idle frame. There we are. And once again, we're going to want to move this 45, and then we can just adjust the rest as needed. Oh, that's an arm. This one's much easier because humans are intended to turn this way. So we don't have to worry too much. But once again, we're going to want to pivot these. Which direction feels more natural? Alan says there's a problem with the flipper. Yeah, those flippers are temporary. They're not properly weight painted. So there we go. That'll do. I think I want to bring them in a little bit though. That's kind of. There we go. So that's going to be tipping down. Just add that all in. It's much easier than tipping up because, hey, humans are supposed to bend like this. There are still a lot of things left. Oh, did I not get the belly right, or does it work on its own without me adjusting it? Let's go ahead and adjust the belly bone a little bit here. This is not precisely the animation I was worried about, and it's not working too bad. It's already preserving the mass there, but I think we want to pull it in and then push it forward like that. That'll just make it a little bit more natural. The bust is not working great. It'll look even worse if it were to be bigger. We might have to redo all of this again later. We'll find out. It's not a big deal. All right, so that's all the animations we need. Let's go ahead and import them into Unity. Hello, Unity. I think it's importing. All right, so we now should have that set up. I do want to do one more thing with the original Divers C. At some point, we'll delete the other divers. Divers C has some extra meshes that are not needed, and I don't want them constantly in our way. So all right, so we're now going to go back over into the other scene, and we're going to manually set it up, and then we're going to know what we need in order to set it up automatically. Import FBX warnings. Tentacles B has 60 verts with no weight or bone assigned. From which file? Why isn't it telling me which file? Brilliant. All right, so let's go over to the other scene. Here's our scene. So if you might remember, the way that it looked when we last left it. Boom, 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 boom. What is this? What a nightmare. If you can't tell, that is a diver with all of their bones stretched 100 times further from the body than they should be, and then scaled down to 1%. So that's because we were using an FBX import system, and that was shitty. So here it is, player. And you can see that we've got our Diver B animations plugged in there, and that's what we'll be replacing today. So we're going to just drop in a different setup. It's going to be Diver C. So if we come down here into Meshes, and we find Diver C, just drop that in just a bloom. And if we take a look, this is what that looks like at the moment. Diver C is currently being imported with the wrong materials, so we're going to go ahead and set those materials up. So we got our body base diver and Diver C. So we're going to use Diver C here, and we're going to use heavy glass here. We're going to use rubber here, and we're going to use we actually don't have it properly cut up. We just use tentacles for the rest. we don't have it properly cut in the file, so we're going to have some problems. Should be okay. Let's grab that generic metal. Where did our generic metal go? Oh, there it is. Default, not generic. My bad. Let's change that out for generic. There we go. So there are a couple of these that are wrong, and we'll just go ahead and drag the right ones on. So is it equipment glow that we need? No, it's not. It's diver gear, I think. And our diver gear also has gets applied down here. That should be right. We're using the default materials. That's fine for now. We can change it up later. So Diver B Animations uses the controller Diver B and so on and so forth. We're going to go ahead and copy that controller. So over here in Animations, here's Diver B. We duplicate that. And we're going to call that Diver C because the logic is all the same. It's just that the animations are different. So if we look over here in Diver C, there is no animator here. So we're going to have to add one. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's because there's no animations in Diver C. That's not an animatable. That's like just meshes. Just meshes. No, the animations take forever to import, which is why I put them in their own file. It's not really a big deal now when all the animations are just 2 frames, but later it'll be a huge mess if I don't put it in its own setup. So we drop the Diver C here in the controller. And for the avatar, we're going to go into our meshes, into Diver C Animations. And it should have an avatar in it. Hold on a second. Let me just check here. Diver C Animations. No animator. That's interesting. What's going on? There we are. I forgot to set one up, that's why. As you might guess, that's not a humanoid rig. So even though it looks like a human, it's got like tentacles and shit, so it can't use a humanoid rig for it. At least not easily. So now it should have one. I'm not sure why Unity is barfing. Look at this. Weird. But we definitely have an armature in here now somewhere. Diver C Animations. So it's got an animator now with a Diver C Animations avatar. Oh, there it is. So we'll just drop that into this. There we go. And I think that should match it up just fine. This has apply root motion applied, but there's no root motion, so it doesn't matter. Update mode normal. This one's update mode always animate. Always animate should be fine because it's to play our character. We should be able to delete this and then go up here into Diver B. We should probably actually already be able to see it. Diver B Animations, we're going to want to delete that. But I'm going to just disable it for now because there's like junk inside that I don't want to lose track of. So here's our Diver B Animations animator. We're going to drop that off and use Diver C instead. There's a large number of additional elements which are not quite right. So we're going to want to switch them out eventually. Let's go ahead and switch out at least the tentacles properly here. So if we look at the crap fins, no, that's the tentacles. There we are. Diver Tentacles B is what they're called, but they're not the same Diver Tentacles B. So we're going to want to drop those in. And we do the crap fins too. You can see this here, this head handler. It is pointing to the other rig, so we're going to have to re-rig it. The look target is fine, but the rest needs to be re-rigged. So here's the neck. Here's the head. Here's the eye left. Here's the eye right. That should be it. There's some other stuff that needs to be fixed up, but this is probably enough to make it work. Let's find out. Did I not hit play? Oh. Yeah, we're coming up on the end of the stream here. Maybe another... Oh, I thought I fixed that. I guess not. So there is like a random piece of junk floating above our head. It appears to be animating aggressively. The actual mesh seems to kink. See that kink? The fuck is that? Maybe it's a weight painting problem. We'll have to look into that. So aside from the weird behavior of the right tentacle, this is pretty much right. We're having some problems with this. This is not how it's supposed to be. What's going on here? The tentacles are misbehaving in a really strange way. That's not how they're supposed to work. There's a lot of things wrong with them. For example, this, they're actually supposed to be opposed instead of in sync. And they were until I broke something. I'll have to look into what I broke. I didn't redo the tentacles in terms of like changing their mesh at all. I didn't repaint them or anything. But it could be that I imported them from an old file and they were painted wrong. Cookie says, could it be something to do with mirroring? Well, yes, it could. But it could also be that I didn't paint the verts correctly. It relies heavily on understanding the verts in order to determine... Yeah, this is actually the wrong... I used an old version of the tentacles. God damn it. When I created this diver, I copied a file that I thought was my most recent file, and you know what? It was not. Anyway, we're going to want to fix up a lot of this junk, so let's go do that. Here's our diver C animations. We don't need that anymore, but we do need the diver C. So here's diver C, and if I unhide everything, there's a ball in the middle of our head. This was for hair modeling. We don't need it. Was that the piece of animation that was doing the weird shit, or is it still there? I don't see it. Is that it? No, I think that's just an icon for lights. Yeah, that fixed it. So you can see that we still have a problem with the actual tentacles. And I think what we're going to have to do is examine the difference between the tentacles in Diver B and Diver C. So this is Diver B animations, which is what I was using to animate until recently. You can see that Diver B animations has wrist bones. I really copied an old setup when I made the file I'm making right now. That's really shitty. Did I get the most recent version of the backpack? Let's take a look. No, I didn't. They're pretty similar. Well, anyway, if we take a look at these rigs here, this is what this looks like. We're going to just hide everything else for the minute. When we look at this, this setup is mirrored, but it's already mirrored. It's like, it happens to be symmetrical. There's not a mirror modifier applied to it. When we look at the painting, it's not painted at all. That can't be right, can it? So here's the one we're currently using. It's also not painted at all. But, unlike its buddy, it is mirrored and then rigged rather than pre-mirrored. Which I guess could be the problem, but that shouldn't affect it at all. Let's go ahead and redo the rigging. Wait, what did I screwed something up, I guess? I thought I knew what I had selected, but apparently I didn't. Gosh, I'm making all sorts of dumb mistakes. Yeah, so take a look. It is this it? Yeah, that's it. Good. Apply and then clear. And then we're going to just automatic weight. And then if we take a look at the rig, that's correct. Good. So that should be fine, right? We're going to want to repaint it later because the rig is very aggressive right now. But there's no point in repainting it if it doesn't work anyway. So all right, so that fixed most of the problems we were having, but the x-axis nonsense is still busted, and the UV map is inverted. Maybe. I think I like it better the other way. So we're gonna come over here. We should stop this. We're gonna select these little bad boys and go over into UV editing. Boom. Here we have them, and you can see that what they've got is they run in that direction, and we're just gonna flip them. And the reason we're doing that is so that the energy marker will drain towards the character instead of away from the character. It doesn't make much sense if your energy seems to be stored in the tips of your toes. That's a little bit strange. I should move the character also. Yeah, that's a little bit more like what I have intended. We no longer have the weird errors we were getting, but we do have the x-axis mirror failing. So we're going to take a look at how that x-axis mirror actually works and what I missed. Alan says, will you be lerping the colors? I could, but I don't actually want to. I like the crispness of the errors, of the colors. It kind of tells you that you've moved into another stage. It would be very easy for me to lerp them, but currently they're actually programmed to not lerp, like on purpose. So here's our diver tentacles. We can open that up in a shader editor. Here's our shader editor. So we've got a glow. That's fine. We've got a wobble scale. And so if we take a look, we've got a couple of values. We're using so we are taking the vertex color. So what we're doing, this is a -1 multiply. We are checking the red value of the verts to see whether or not we need to invert the X wobble. I don't know why. I don't know what I was using that was working without that, but it shouldn't have been. So all we're really going to do is go over into paint mode. Just go back into layout, I guess. And then we'll select them. And then we'll go into vertex paint. And we'll just paint them black. Why are they not painting? Oh, you know, I bet they were painted in the other ones, and I just couldn't see them because I was in the wrong view mode. That looks like an awful lot like there's some white left, but it could just be errors in the mesh. Oh my god, these meshes are bad. I can't believe I copied such crap stuff. Maybe it was always wrong and I just never noticed it before. Is there a face there that I just can't see? Is it just maybe the faces are just backwards? That's fine. We'll flip them. Flip. All right, so that should work. That should now be inverted properly. Were there any other colors involved here, or was it just red? I don't see any other vertex color situations here. There's a vertex position, but no vertex color. Let's see whether or not the X flip is working now. All right, so, yep, now that's more like it. You can see how much more nice that is in terms of how it feels. The turning is not being activated very aggressively. I probably want to really punch up the turning priority. Well, we can polish that later. Because I'd like you to really feel like you're turning when you're turning. Let's see whether or not the... I don't think the tipping is going to work because I think I have to change... Oh, I should turn off cast shadows on the holograms. But I don't think the tipping is going to work. Oh, nope, not with that rock. That rock apparently doesn't exist. Actually, I think it's my diver that doesn't exist. Yeah, there's no colliders right now. So while I'm thinking about it, let's go turn off the cast shadows on the mission that we created there. There we go. That's better. So that's pretty much all for today. I'm really hungry, and so I'm thinking about eating something instead of continuing to stream. Isn't that nice? So have a nice set of... Wait, hold on. What's wrong with our legs? You know what? We're using an avatar... this. So this is our scale free humanoid. And I think we just need to switch this so that it is a based on a different avatar. Yeah, we're using the wrong avatar for it. That's why we're getting this nonsense. So we're going to come down here into meshes and Diver C animations and find our avatar. There we go. Import that skeleton. We're only going to want to use the armature. Use node name armature. Yes, that's what I want. How do I import it? No? I thought there was like a... Oh, there we go. So now we've imported everything on that skeleton. And basically we just come down here into scale and we turn all these off. And that should be it. And then we come over here into the base layer. And this should be the same one. Yeah, no problem. So I'm thinking that the error might simply be that the pelvis wasn't turned on properly. Yeah, that was the problem. There's definitely still something wrong. The pelvic bones are being reverted to 0, 0, 0. Oh, well, it says there's a network error, so presumably my stream crashed. Either way, now is a good time to stop. I'll figure out what's wrong with these pelvic bones later. I think maybe I might have animated them wrong, but that shouldn't work. I don't know. See ya if you can still hear me.